Professor Park, you're refusing £400,000. You do realize you'll spend the rest of your life drowning in debt, don't you? My hands shake because of my pain, my failure, my rebirth. This tremor is my soul, and I will never let a machine steal what cost me everything to find. I'd rather die poor and honest than live rich as a counterfeit of myself. Ji-hwan, tonight you are this country's greatest designer. Of course, Eugene, this is the moment we created together. Then let's raise a toast to our future. The clear sound of champagne glasses clinking echoed through the space. In Cheongdam-dong, Gangnam-gu, Seoul, hundreds of crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling of the massive glass atelier. Below them gathered the titans of Korea's fashion industry. Actresses, daughters of conglomerate families, renowned gallery directors. Everyone lined up to shake Park Ji-hwan's hand, calling his name. Park Ji-hwan stood at the center of the stage, in a tailored black suit. Behind him, the highlight dresses of this season's collection were displayed. They were pieces that reinterpreted traditional Korean embroidery techniques in a modern way on pure white silk. Each time the flash went off, the silver threads on the dresses sparkled, and the audience gasped in admiration. Standing beside him was his fiancée, Han Yoo-jin. She was a former executive at a luxury brand's Korean branch, known in the industry as the Iron Lady, with sharp features, perfectly styled hair, and a 5-carat diamond necklace catching the light around her neck. She held Ji-hwan's arm tightly, but her gaze continuously scanned the surroundings, checking who had arrived, who was watching them. Eugene's mother sat in the VIP seats at the front of the stage with the elegance befitting a former diplomat. She smiled graciously while exchanging business cards with those around her. Whenever she introduced Ji-hwan, she never failed to add, "my future son-in-law," as if Ji-hwan were her family's possession. Eugene's older brother, Han Sang-woo, was sipping champagne backstage. He was the CEO of a venture capital firm. After the fashion show ended, he planned to pitch Ji-hwan a new investment proposal, a real estate development project that was actually a scam to cover his own debts. But Ji-hwan had no idea of his ulterior motives. After the fashion show, the after-party began. A jazz band played upbeat melodies, and waiters busily moved about carrying canapes topped with gold leaf. Ji-hwan held a wine glass in one hand and shook hands endlessly. His hands were soft, the hands of a designer who had only held pens and sketchbooks, hands unacquainted with rough work. A famous actress approached and said, "When I wear your pieces, Ji-hwan, I naturally gain elegance. Please, I must work with you." For the next awards ceremony, Ji-hwan bowed his head humbly, but somewhere in his eyes lurked arrogance, the thought that his clothes added dignity to someone's life. It was the seed of pride. As midnight approached, Eugene whispered in his ear, "Honey, Sang-woo Oppa says he has a good investment opportunity. Why don't you hear him out?" Ji-hwan nodded tiredly. "Let's talk about it later. I want to rest today." Eugene frowned slightly, but quickly covered it with a smile. "Then let's discuss it over lunch. At my place tomorrow. Mom will want to hear about it too." After the party ended, Ji-hwan remained alone in the atelier. The lights went out one by one, and silence settled in. He stood by the window, looking down at Seoul's night view. The lights of Gangnam sparkled. He believed this moment would last forever, that his name would shine eternally. But he didn't know that in just 3 weeks, all of this would crumble in an instant, and that in those ruins, he would discover his true self. Rain began to fall faintly outside the window. At 9 in the morning, Ji-hwan's phone started vibrating. At first, it was just 1 or 2 calls. Then it increased to 10, 20. Text messages, emails, and social media messages poured in like a waterfall. Ji-hwan, still half asleep, turned on his screen. The first message was from a gallery director who had been his longtime partner. Ji-hwan, have you seen the number? One real-time search term. On the portal site? Check it quickly. Ji-hwan's heart began to race. He hurriedly opened the search window. Park Ji-hwan plagiarism controversy. New. Designer exposes Park Ji-hwan's design. Theft, the true face of fashion master. Email evidence revealed articles were pouring out. The comment section was already flooded with hate comments. Ji-hwan's hands trembled. He clicked on an article. A new designer had posted an expose on her social media. Her name was Lee Min-seo, an employee who had worked as an intern at Ji-hwan's atelier 2 years ago. Min-seo claimed that 12 design proposals she had submitted were used, as is in Ji-hwan's recent collection. As evidence, she published email screenshots and original sketch files. Ji-hwan frantically searched through old files. If his memory was correct, those designs were created. Through team brainstorming, Min-seo had participated, but the final designs were modified and completed by Ji-hwan. However, the email content could be interpreted differently. There were sentences where Ji-hwan replied, "That's good. Let's go in this direction," to drafts Min-seo sent. Ignoring the context, it looked as if Ji-hwan had taken her ideas as is. Min-seo was furious that her name wasn't mentioned in the credits at all after she left. In truth, Min-seo had been fired by Ji-hwan. There had been a tip that she tried to leak customer information without permission, but she hid that fact and framed herself as someone who had been unjustly exploited. And that frame worked perfectly. At 11 in the morning, contract cancellation notices flew in from Ji-hwan's major clients. The wife of a conglomerate chairman cancelled next season's clothing production, saying, "We have no choice," for image management reasons. 3 VIP department store customers withdrew their custom dress orders. At 2 in the afternoon, sponsors who had promised funding pulled out. The most devastating blow was the investment that Eugene brother Han Sang-woo had recommended. 3 weeks ago, Ji-hwan had been persuaded by Sang-woo and invested 70% of his entire fortune into a Gangnam redevelopment project. Sang-woo had been confident, saying, "I'll double it for you within 6 months." But that was a lie. At 5 in the afternoon, he called Sang-woo, but got no answer. His texts were read but ignored. With an anxious heart, Ji-hwan reviewed the investment-related documents again, and he discovered a shocking fact. The real estate address specified in the contract didn't actually exist. Sang-woo had deceived him with false documents. The next morning, an even greater disaster struck. A call came from the atelier. "Building owner, Manager Park, this month's rent hasn't come in yet." Ji-hwan was flustered. The rent was set up for automatic transfer. He opened his banking app. His account balance was close to zero. Sang-woo had not only embezzled the investment funds, but had also siphoned money from accounts under Ji-hwan's name. Ji-hwan reported it to the police, but Sang-woo had already fled overseas. The police said, "We're tracking him, but it will take time." That night, Ji-hwan collapsed on the atelier floor. His hands trembled. At first, he thought it was because of anger, but the trembling didn't stop. Even when he tried to hold a pen, his fingers had no strength. He couldn't draw a single line on his sketchbook. He went to the hospital. The doctor diagnosed neurological tremor due to extreme stress. "You need rest. You must avoid using your hands for work for at least 6 months." To Ji-hwan, those words were tantamount to a death sentence. A designer unable to draw was a denial of his existence. A week later, creditors came. A seizure notice was posted at the atelier entrance. The 15-year career Ji-hwan had built collapsed in 1 week. Ji-hwan moved into a small Goshiwon room. The space was barely 10 square meters, with only a bed and a desk. There was no window. The sounds of other tenants coughing and TV noise flowed through the walls from the hallway. Ji-hwan lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. The flickering of the fluorescent light irritated his eyes. He kept his phone turned off. There were no more calls to answer, no more messages to read. People he had considered friends didn't answer his calls. Junior designers who once called him Young Nim unfollowed him on social media. Fashion magazines deleted his past interview articles. It felt like his existence was being erased. Ji-hwan attempted a comeback. He submitted resumes to small garment factories. The interviewer looked at his experience and laughed. "Park Ji-hwan, aren't you the one involved in that plagiarism dispute? You're not someone who should work at a place like ours." Other places were the same. The rumors had already spread throughout the industry. The hand trembling got worse. Even holding a water cup made it shake, and chopsticks were difficult to use. He couldn't afford hospital bills, so he stopped taking medication. Every night he had nightmares. In his dreams, he stood on stage, and the audience threw stones at him. One afternoon, there was a knock on the door. Ji-hwan thought it was another creditor and didn't open it. But the knocking continued. Reluctantly, he opened the door. Yoo-jin was standing there. Unlike before, she wore no makeup, but she was still wearing a luxury brand coat. The moment Ji-hwan saw her, he felt relief, hoped that someone hadn't abandoned him. But when Yoo-jin opened her mouth, that hope shattered. "Ji-hwan, I think we need to talk." She pulled an envelope from her bag. "It's a divorce. No, an engagement. Cancellation agreement, since we're not married. Yet, the process is simple." Ji-hwan's mouth wouldn't open. Yoo-jin continued in an emotionless voice. "Ji-hwan, let's think realistically. Right now, you can't be responsible for my future. I'm going back to the luxury brand industry, but if I stay by your side, my image will fall too." Ji-hwan's throat tightened. "Yoo-jin, I'm really struggling right now. You at least need to stay by my side." Yoo-jin shook her head. "I'm sorry, but I'm not your rehabilitation trainer. I have to live my own life." She placed the documents on the table and turned around. Ji-hwan grabbed her arm. "At least give me Sang-woo's contact information. My money." Yoo-jin coldly shook off his arm. "You signed the investment documents. That's your responsibility. Don't make it our family's problem." After she left, Ji-hwan tore up the documents, but he soon regretted it. Tearing up the documents didn't change reality. He sat on the floor and cried. He wept openly. Someone passing by in the Goshiwon hallway muttered, "That person's starting again." The next day, Ji-hwan left the Goshiwon. With his remaining money, he bought a bus ticket. He didn't decide on a destination. He just took the bus that went the farthest. He wanted to leave Seoul. He wanted to escape from the lights, noise, and gazes of this city. The bus ran down the highway. Outside the window, the city's buildings gradually became smaller, and mountains and fields unfolded. Ji-hwan leaned his forehead against the window. His hands were still trembling. He thought, "Can I create something again with these hands? No, can I start anything again with this life?" The bus kept running without a destination. The bus stopped at a rural terminal in Incheon, Gyeonggi Province. Ji-hwan got off. He looked around. In front of the terminal were an old supermarket, a hardware store, and several aged hanok houses. There weren't many people. It was quiet. To Ji-hwan, that felt like comfort. He found a real estate agency. The sign was faded, and inside, A man who appeared to be in his 60s was watching TV. "Are you looking for a place?" Ji-hwan nodded. "Monthly rent. The cheapest one." The agent took Ji-hwan toward the outskirts of the village. They walked for about 10 minutes, along a narrow cement road. An old hanok appeared. The roof tiles were broken in places, and weeds grew thick in the yard. The gate creaked. The owner grandmother went into a nursing home, so it's been empty. £200 a month will do. Ji-hwan signed the contract without hesitation. It was cheaper than the Seoul Goshiwon, and above all, it was a place where no one would recognize him. He had no luggage to speak of, just one backpack. Ji-hwan lay down on the hanok's wooden floor. It smelled of wood. Dust had accumulated on the ceiling, and the paper door swayed in the wind. He closed his eyes. For the first time, he felt stillness. A week passed. Ji-hwan barely left the house. He only bought instant noodles and water from the supermarket. Because of the hand trembling, even boiling noodles was difficult. While lifting the pot, he spilled hot water on the back of his hand. One morning, there was a presence outside the door. Ji-hwan tried to ignore it, but the knocking continued. "Excuse me, is anyone home?" It was a woman's voice, young. Reluctantly, he opened the door. A young woman in work. Clothes stood there. Her hands had soil on them, and there were dirt marks on her face. She smiled brightly. "Hello, I'm Yoon Dae-yoon. I work with ceramics in the next village. I heard someone new moved in." Ji-hwan answered curtly, "Yes." "So what?" Dae-yoon continued undeterred. "This neighborhood is a pottery village. I'm also making ceramics here. Are you interested by any chance?" "No." Ji-hwan tried to close the door, but Dae-yoon blocked it with her hand. "Wait, are you by any chance Park Ji-hwan?" Ji-hwan's face hardened. He was caught. He didn't answer. Dae-yoon spoke carefully. "5 years ago, when you came to give a special lecture at Seoul National University's design department, I audited it. What you said then changed my life. You said every artist must know what it feels like to start from nothing." Ji-hwan remembered those words, how arrogant he had been in his youth. At the time, it wasn't sincere. He had just said something that sounded impressive, but now he truly had nothing. Dae-yoon continued, "Professor, you're struggling a lot right now, aren't you? I know, I saw the news. But you're still an artist. Even if your hands shake, even if you have no fame." Tears welled up in Ji-hwan's eyes. This stranger still called him Professor. He turned his head. "Please leave. I'm nothing now." Dae-yoon didn't back down. Instead, she took out a lunchbox from her bag. "This is kimchi stew I made this morning. Please eat it." And she handed him a small note. "This is my studio address. Come anytime. Try making ceramics. Even if your hands shake, it's okay. Clay accepts mistakes." She left with a smile. Ji-hwan opened the lunchbox. Steam rose from the kimchi stew. He tried to lift the lid with his hand and dropped it. The soup spilled on the floor. Ji-hwan knelt down and wiped the floor, and he cried. This time, not from anger, but from warmth. 3 days later, Ji-hwan visited Dae-yoon's studio. It was an old warehouse building on a hill in the village. When he opened the door, the smell of clay stung his nose. Inside the studio were 3 pottery wheels and ceramics placed on shelves. Some hadn't been fired yet, and some were glazed. Dae-yoon was sitting in front of a wheel working. As her hands gently caressed the clay, a cylindrical shape rose up. Ji-hwan stared blankly at the scene. The sound of the wheel turning, the texture of clay moistened with water, and the pottery gradually taking shape. Everything was unfamiliar. Dae-yoon saw Ji-hwan and smiled brightly. "You came. I was waiting for you." She stopped the wheel and brought another chair. "Sit here. First, try touching the clay." Ji-hwan hesitated. His hands were still trembling. I can't use my hands properly. I don't know if I can do something like this. Dayun shook her head. Just because your hands shake doesn't mean you can't make ceramics. What's important is having a conversation with the clay. She took Ji-hwan's hand and placed it on the clay. A cold, moist texture transmitted to his palm. Ji-hwan was startled. Everything he had touched in Seoul had been smooth, silk velvet leather. But this clay was rough. It seemed alive. Dayun said, "Fashion pursues perfection, right? Every stitch must be precise. The silhouette must be perfect. But ceramics are different. When you put it in the kiln, the clay decides for itself. It might warp, the glaze might flow differently than expected. That's the charm." Ji-hwan slowly kneaded the clay. His hands trembled, but the clay seemed to absorb that trembling. Dayun slowly turned the wheel. "Now press the center." Slowly, Ji-hwan's hand pressed the center of the clay. As the wheel turned, the clay rose up, and then it collapsed. Ji-hwan sighed. "I knew it wouldn't work." Dayun laughed. "No one succeeds the first time. Try again, again, and again." Ji-hwan repeated. 10 times, 20 times, the clay kept collapsing. But strangely, he didn't feel frustrated. Rather, his mind became calm. A quiet space with only the sound of the wheel turning. No one was evaluating him. No one was laughing at his failures. After about an hour, a small bowl was completed in Ji-hwan's hands. It was lumpy. One side was higher, and the edges weren't smooth. But it was something Ji-hwan had made. With trembling hands, for the first time, Dayun clapped. "You did well. It's your first piece." Ji-hwan looked at the bowl. It was ugly, far from the perfection that could appear at a fashion show, but somehow tears came. Dayun asked, "Professor, what will you do now? Will you go back to Seoul?" Ji-hwan shook his head. "I don't know, but I want to try this a bit more." "Ceramics?" Dayun smiled brightly. "Great. Then come every day starting tomorrow. I'll teach you." Ji-hwan smiled for the first time. The first time since leaving Seoul. That evening on the way back to the Hanok, Ji-hwan stopped. He spread out his hands. They were still trembling, but today he had created something with that trembling. Not perfect, but real. He looked up at the sky. There were so many stars, it seemed they would pour down. Stars he couldn't see in Seoul. Ji-hwan took a deep breath. Could he start again? No, must he start again? He didn't know yet that each day here would transform him into a completely different person. 2 years passed. Ji-hwan's hands still trembled, but now it had become part of him. Every morning at 6, he headed to Dayun's studio. In winter, it was cold, enough to freeze his hands, and in summer, he sweated in front of the kiln. But he didn't stop. Wheel throwing was still difficult. He couldn't make perfectly symmetrical jars like other potters. Because of his hand tremors, a subtle wavering was carved into each piece of pottery. At first, he tried to hide it. He thought they were failures. One day, the village's veteran potter, Master Kim, visited the studio. He was an old man over 80, but his eyes were sharp. He examined Ji-hwan's works one by one. He was silent for a long time. Ji-hwan was nervous. Master Kim opened his mouth. "This tremor, did you make it intentionally?" Ji-hwan lowered his head. "No, I can't use my hands properly." Master Kim laughed. "You're lucky. People who have pursued perfection their whole lives can never obtain this kind of freedom. This tremor is your language." After that day, Ji-hwan began to accept the trembling. Rather, he emphasized it. Even when applying glaze, he drew irregular lines with his trembling hands. The ceramics that came out of the kiln were all different. Some had glaze flowing down, creating wave patterns, and some cracked and were mended with gold, like the Japanese Kintsugi technique. But reality was not easy. Ji-hwan's phone still received calls from creditors. Mr. Park Ji-hwan, how long will you keep running away? With principal and interest, it's now 60,000 pounds. Ji-hwan gradually paid it back, with money earned from part-time jobs each month. He carried goods at the village supermarket and helped with farm work. One night, when he turned on his phone, a news notification appeared. Han Yoo-jin's wedding news. The groom was the son of a major pharmaceutical company chairman. In the photo, Yoo-jin wore a glamorous wedding dress and smiled brightly, as if the time with Ji-hwan had never existed. Ji-hwan wanted to throw his phone, but he didn't. Instead, he went to the studio. It was the middle of the night, but he turned the wheel alone. He poured his anger, sense of betrayal, and sadness into the clay. Until 4 in the morning, he made 15 bowls. They were all distorted, but they contained sincerity. Da-yoon came in the morning and saw those bowls. "Professor, did you work all night?" Ji-hwan didn't answer. Da-yoon quietly sat next to him. "Something difficult happened?" Ji-hwan nodded. Da-yoon said, "I also left Seoul Life and came here. I used to work in a corporate design office, but there I had to make company products, not my own works. I couldn't even put my name on them, so I ran away. Here." Ji-hwan looked at Da-eun. "Don't you regret it?" Da-eun smiled. "Sometimes, but when I think of someone drinking coffee from a cup I made here, that's more meaningful. You'll know soon too, Professor." That autumn, several of Ji-hwan's works were exhibited at the Village Craft Exhibition. A few tourists showed interest. A foreign woman bought Ji-hwan's coffee cup. "This tremor is so beautiful. It's like a heartbeat," she said in awkward Korean. Ji-hwan experienced having his work sold for the first time. The amount was 40 pounds. Compared to the money he used to earn in Seoul, it was nothing. But that 40 pounds was different. It was payment for something made, with trembling hands, with sincerity. Da-yoon patted his shoulder. "Congratulations, Professor. Now you're a real potter." Ji-hwan smiled. He felt like crying, but held it back. But that night, another call came. "Mr. Park Ji-hwan, if 24,000 pounds isn't deposited by next week, legal action will be taken." Ji-hwan sighed. There was still a long way to go. In the spring of the 3rd year, a turning point arrived. A curator from a famous Seoul gallery visited the village exhibition. She stopped for a long time in front of Ji-hwan's work. "Can I contact this artist?" Da-eun introduced Ji-hwan. The curator's name was Jang Mi-rae. She took photos of Ji-hwan's works, while saying, "This imperfection is really unique. It's a message that perfectly fits the times. It's okay not to be perfect. Would you consider having a solo exhibition?" Ji-hwan was flustered. "I don't have enough work for a solo exhibition." Mi-rae smiled. "I'll give you 6 months. Just prepare 30 pieces. Let's do it at the Samcheongdong Gallery in Seoul." After that day, Ji-hwan worked like crazy. He sat in front of the wheel for 10 hours a day. His hands trembled more severely, but he didn't care. Da-yoon also helped. They researched glaze combinations and adjusted kiln temperatures. 5 months later, 28 pieces were completed. He named each one. Tremor number 1, tremor number 2, tremor number 28. And for the last 2 pieces, he came up with a special idea. He mended cracked ceramics with gold powder. The title was Light of Scars. 1 month before the solo exhibition, an unexpected call came. "Professor Park Ji-hwan, I'm Kim Dae-ho, planning team manager at Dae-ho Foods." Dae-ho Foods was one of Korea's top 3 food conglomerates. Manager Kim had seen Ji-hwan's ceramics and made a proposal. "We'd like to apply your design to our premium tableware line. We'll mass produce it in the factory, but use your name as the brand. The signing bonus alone is £400,000. £400,000, an amount that would pay off Ji-hwan's debts in one go with money left over. He couldn't breathe. What are the conditions? Manager Kim answered, just give us the design license. We'll handle production. Of course, handwork is impossible. We'll have to press them in molds, but we'll maintain your style. Molds, factory, mass production. Ji-hwan's mind became complicated. That was exactly the system he had wanted to escape from in Seoul. But the number £400,000 was tempting. There would be no more sleepless nights because of debt. Manager Kim said, I'll give you a week. Review the contract and contact me. The call ended. Ji-hwan sat down on the studio floor. Dae-yoon asked, what's wrong? Ji-hwan explained the situation. Dae-yoon was silent for a moment. Then she spoke carefully. It's your choice, Professor. But can I ask one thing? Why is the pottery you make now making you happy? Ji-hwan couldn't answer. Dae-yoon continued, I think it's because you're making it directly with these hands. Even the trembling is entirely yours. If a machine replaces that, wouldn't that become just a product, not your work? All night, Ji-hwan couldn't sleep. He spread out the contract and read it again and again. Each clause was clear. Design rights transfer to the company. The company decides production methods. Ji-hwan would just lend his name. The sun rose outside the window. Ji-hwan went to the studio. He picked up one piece of pottery he had made. The irregular lines created by the trembling sparkled in the sunlight. At that moment, he realized this trembling was something machines couldn't imitate. This was his pain, and, at the same time, his identity. It was the morning of the day he decided to stamp the contract. Ji-hwan took out a suit and put it on. A suit he was wearing for the first time in 3 years. He looked in the mirror. A stranger stood there. His face was tanned, and calluses had formed on his hands. He was no longer a Gangnam designer. The meeting place with Manager Kim was a luxury hotel lounge in downtown Seoul. Ji-hwan took a bus to Seoul. It was Seoul after 3 years. The buildings were still tall, and people walked busily. But to Ji-hwan, it was no longer familiar. He arrived at the lounge. Manager Kim was already there. He smiled brightly and offered a handshake. Welcome, Professor. You've made a good decision, right? Ji-hwan took out the contract from his bag. Manager Kim handed him a pen. It was a gold-plated fountain pen. Ji-hwan held the pen. His hand trembled. It wasn't the old trembling. This time, it was from fear. He brought the pen tip to the signature line, but he stopped. Suddenly, he heard Dae-yoon's voice. If a machine replaces that, it's not your work, Professor. He also heard Master Kim's voice. This tremor is your language. Ji-hwan put down the pen. I'm sorry. I can't do it. Manager Kim's face hardened. What? What are you saying? Ji-hwan answered. My work must only be made with my hands. What's pressed out by machines isn't my tremor. Manager Kim looked dumbfounded. Professor, are you refusing £400,000 right now? Don't you have debts? Ji-hwan nodded. Yes, I'll pay back the debts slowly myself, but I can't sell my soul. He stood up from his seat. Manager Kim shouted, You'll regret this later. Ji-hwan didn't look back. He left the lounge and walked out onto the street. Rain began to fall. Ji-hwan just walked without an umbrella. His whole body got wet, but strangely, his heart felt light. He stopped at Gwanghwamun Plaza. He stood alone in the rain, and he laughed. He laughed loudly. Passers-by looked at him strangely, but he didn't care. He was finally free. From money, from fame, from others' gazes. His phone rang. It was Da-eun. Professor, how did it go? Ji-hwan answered. I refused. Dae-yoon was silent for a moment, then said, You did. Well, Congratulations. Tears were mixed in her voice. Ji-hwan took the bus back to Icheon. Outside the window, Seoul receded into the distance. He spread out his hands. They were still trembling, but now he was proud of that trembling. Returning to the studio, he completed the last two pieces. Light of Scars #1 and Light of Scars #2. He filled cracked ceramics with gold powder. The gold sparkled in the sunlight. Not perfect, but therefore more beautiful. Preparation for the solo exhibition was finished. All 30 pieces were loaded onto a truck. The road to Seoul. This time, not running away, but returning with dignity. It was the opening day of the solo exhibition at the Samcheongdong Gallery. Ji-hwan was nervous. Would people come? Would they understand his work? But when the doors opened at 6 in the evening, people began to pour in. The audience lingered in front of the works for a long time. Some people carefully touched the surface of the ceramics with their hands. This tremor, was it really made by hand? Ji-hwan answered, "Yes, it happened because my hands shake." A middle-aged woman said, with tears in her eyes, "I also have hand tremors from Parkinson's disease. But seeing this work, I learned that trembling can also be beautiful." Ji-hwan's chest swelled. His weakness had become comfort to someone. Art critics' responses were also enthusiastic. In an era dominated by perfectionism, he presented the aesthetics of imperfection, a masterpiece where traditional pottery techniques and modern sensibility achieve harmony. Reviews poured out. On social media, the hashtag Tremor exhibition trended. On the first day of the solo exhibition, 15 of 30 pieces sold. Prices ranged from £400 to £1,600 each. Total revenue was £14,000. Even after the gallery commission, Ji-hwan received £9,600. He immediately deposited that money with his creditors. But the real change came after that. A British museum curator saw the exhibition and contacted him. The Victoria and Albert Museum in London is preparing a special exhibition of Korean contemporary crafts. Would you participate? Ji-hwan couldn't believe it. The V&A was a world-class museum. 6 months later, 5 of Ji-hwan's works crossed over to London. The exhibition title was Beauty in Imperfection Korean Contemporary Ceramics. The British daily newspaper, The Guardian, featured his work on the cover. Tremor as art, the Korean potter who turned weakness into strength. Orders began to flood in. Galleries in New York, Paris, and Tokyo wanted his works. Famous restaurants wanted to serve food in Ji-hwan's bowls. Prices jumped several times. £4,000 per piece. Some sold for £8,000. A year later, Ji-hwan paid off all his debts. £60,000. The weight that had pressed down on him for 3 years disappeared. That night, he grilled pork belly with Daun at the village restaurant. "Congratulations, Professor. Now you're truly free." Daun raised her soju glass. Ji-hwan smiled. "Freedom, right. But the strange thing is, now that I have money, my work is actually better. Before, I made things hastily because of money, but now I can make them slowly." The BBC proposed filming a documentary. They wanted to capture Ji-hwan's story with the title The Potter's Redemption. The filming crew came to Icheon village. They filmed Ji-hwan's daily life, the scene of turning the wheel at dawn, the moment of taking works out of the kiln, conversations with Daun. When the documentary aired, the response was explosive. 5 million YouTube views, comments from people all over the world cheering. "Your tremor is your signature. Imperfection is the new perfection. This man is a true artist." Ji-hwan was no longer a failed designer. He was called a pioneer of K-craft, a poet of imperfection. But the most important thing was that he himself had changed. He no longer cared about others' gazes. He just lived, conversing with clay. He expanded the studio, 5 pottery wheels, 2 kilns. Ji-hwan also became a partner now. The two created a brand called Tremor Studio. They also taught young potters. It's okay not to be perfect. Your imperfection is your style. And one autumn day, an unexpected visitor came. It was an October afternoon. A black luxury sedan stopped in front of the studio. Ji-hwan was turning the wheel and looked out the window. The car door opened, and a woman in a luxury brand coat got out. It was Han Yoo-jin. Ji-hwan's heart raced. It had been 3 years. Yoo-jin took off her sunglasses and looked around the studio. Behind her, another woman got out. It was Yoo-jin's mother, still elegantly dressed, but fatigue was evident on her face. Ji-hwan looked at Ji-hwan. "Professor, who are they?" Ji-hwan didn't answer. He just stopped the wheel and slowly stood up. Yoo-jin opened the studio door and entered. She smiled awkwardly. "Ji-hwan, it's been a while." Her voice was soft but somehow calculated. Ji-hwan silently looked at her. Yoo-jin's mother looked around and said, "So this is that famous studio. I saw it on BBC. You were truly impressive." It sounded like praise, but arrogance still permeated her tone. Yoo-jin took a step closer. "Ji-hwan, I got divorced." Tears formed in her eyes. Whether they were real, tears or acting was unclear. "My husband, he hit me. He also cheated. I really had a hard time." Ji-hwan remained silent. Yoo-jin continued, "I heard you succeeded, Ji-hwan. I was so proud. I always believed you would rise again." It was a lie. She had been the first to leave. When Ji-hwan collapsed, Yoo-jin's mother interjected, "Ji-hwan, our Yoo-jin was really struggling back then. It's hard for a woman to live alone. Please understand." It was an excuse, evading responsibility. Yoo-jin tried to hold Ji-hwan's hand. "Can't we start over? I need you. If you also had someone like me by your side." Ji-hwan pulled his hand back. Ji-hwan quietly said, "Professor, I'll wait outside." She considerately left. Only Ji-hwan, Yoo-jin, and Yoo-jin's mother remained in the studio. Yoo-jin spoke again. "Ji-hwan, I was wrong, but I couldn't help it then. You understand too. I always supported your success. Could you have come this far without me?" At those words, Ji-hwan's eyes changed. Yoo-jin still believed she had contributed to Ji-hwan's success. She was packaging her leaving not as abandonment, but as testing Ji-hwan to make him succeed. Ji-hwan opened his mouth for the first time. "Yoo-jin, please wait a moment." He went to the small kitchen and began preparing a meal. Yoo-jin and her mother looked at each other. Yoo-jin took this as a sign of reconciliation. She smiled. 15 minutes later, Ji-hwan brought out the meal. Warm rice, soybean paste stew, kimchi, and small plates Ji-hwan had made himself. Yoo-jin and her mother sat down. Yoo-jin picked up chopsticks and said, "You're good with your hands as always. Did you also make these bowls?" Ji-hwan nodded. They began eating. The meal ended. Yoo-jin smiled with satisfaction. "So shall we?" Ji-hwan took out an envelope. Yoo-jin's eyes lit up, thinking it was a ring box. But what came out of the envelope was an old document. The engagement cancellation agreement Yoo-jin had thrown down 3 years ago. Ji-hwan had kept it. Ji-hwan quietly placed the document on the table. Yoo-jin's face hardened. Her mother also made an uncomfortable expression. Ji-hwan spoke calmly. "This meal is my last courtesy for someone who was once by my side." Yoo-jin tried to interrupt, but Ji-hwan raised his hand to stop her. "Yoo-jin and mother, please listen. 3 years ago, I lost everything. Money, fame, and even the person I believed I loved. I remember what you said then, Yoo-jin. You told me to think realistically, that I was no longer useful." Yoo-jin tried to make excuses. "Ji-hwan, that was Ji-hwan continued gently but firmly. No, Eugene, you weren't wrong. I really was useless then, at least by the standards you wanted. Ji-hwan spread out his hands. They were still trembling slightly. These hands still shake. But now I love this trembling, because this is me. Not perfect, unstable, sometimes making mistakes. The human Park Ji-hwan, Eugene's mother, uncomfortably, tried to get up. But Ji-hwan's words continued. What you loved, Eugene, was Park Ji-hwan of Gangnam, wearing a chef's uniform, taking photos with celebrities, a successful designer who earned well. But that person was empty inside, a shell filled with others' evaluations. Ji-hwan looked around the studio. The clay-covered wheel, ceramics on shelves, the rural scenery outside the window. Here, I learned who I really am. By touching clay, by failing, by getting up again. In that process, I also met people who loved and believed in me. Dae-yoon was quietly watching this scene from outside the window. Ji-hwan nodded toward her. That person was by my side. When I was nothing, when my hands shook so much, I couldn't even eat properly, she fed me. When I wanted to give up, she put a lump of clay in my hands. Real tears formed in Eugene's eyes. This time, not from calculation, but from shame. Ji-hwan continued, Eugene, I don't resent you. Rather, I'm grateful. If you hadn't left, I would have lived as a fake forever. Ji-hwan pushed the engagement cancellation agreement toward Eugene. I'm returning this. Now officially, we're strangers. Eugene, live your own life. But you're no longer in mine. Eugene's mother stood up angrily. This is so rude. Our daughter came all this way. With such courage, Ji-hwan answered calmly. I showed courtesy. I served a meal and conveyed my feelings. But no more than that. Eugene asked in a trembling voice, Ji-hwan, you really can't forgive me. Ji-hwan shook his head. I've already forgiven you. But starting over is a separate matter. If I'm with you, I feel like I'd have to become Gangnam's Park Ji-hwan again. I don't want to go back to being that person. Ji-hwan opened the door, a signal to leave. Eugene stood up from her seat. One last time, she looked at Ji-hwan. You've really changed? Ji-hwan smiled. Yes, fortunately. Eugene and her mother got in the car. Ji-hwan quietly watched the car leave. Dust rose, and soon the car disappeared from sight. Dae-yoon approached. Are you okay? Ji-hwan nodded. Yes, I'm really okay now. His voice didn't waver. The sun began to set. The sky turned orange. Ji-hwan and Dae-yoon sat side by side on a bench outside the studio. In the distance, the village rooftops sparkled in the evening sunlight. Dae-yoon asked carefully, Professor, don't you have any regrets? Ji-hwan asked back, about what? Dae-yoon answered, soul, fame, and that person. Ji-hwan thought for a moment, then spread out his hands. They were still trembling, but those hands had made beautiful ceramics today, imperfect but sincere. Regrets? I regret one thing, not coming here sooner. Ji-hwan smiled. I didn't know then how empty a life I was living. Intoxicated by others' applause, I couldn't hear my own heartbeat. Dae-yoon leaned her head on Ji-hwan's shoulder. It was a natural gesture. Ji-hwan didn't move. That warmth was comfortable. Professor, I have a confession, Dae-yoon said. Ji-hwan looked at her. Dae-yoon's face reddened as she continued. Actually, I've liked you since that lecture, 5 years ago. Of course, it was respect then. But after you came here, I came to like you as a real person. Ji-hwan's heart beat, not from surprise, but from joy. He held Dae-yoon's hand with trembling hands. Me too, but I didn't have the courage to say it. I thought I didn't have much to give you. Dae-yoon smiled. What are you talking about? Professor, you gave me the most important thing, sincerity. The two looked at the sunset, in silence for a while. Master Kim passed by and saw the two. He grinned and gave a thumbs up. Lucky youngsters. Ji-hwan and Da-eun blushed and laughed. That night, Ji-hwan stayed alone in the studio. He wanted to make one last piece. He turned the wheel and raised the clay. His hands still trembled, but now he danced with that trembling. 2 hours later, a small teacup was completed. Wave patterns created by the trembling were carved on the surface. Ji-hwan named the cup Return. He hadn't run away to Seoul, but had returned to his true self. He placed the teacup on the shelf and went outside. The night sky had countless stars. Stars he couldn't see in Seoul. Ji-hwan breathed deeply. The smell of earth, grass, and peaceful night. His phone rang. It was gallery curator Jang Mirai, professor, the Museum of Modern Art in New York contacted us. They want to invite you to a special exhibition next fall. Ji-hwan smiled. Thank you, but I need time to prepare the work. I want to do it slowly. Mirai said in surprise, Professor, this is a really big opportunity. Most people, Ji-hwan gently cut her off. I want to be an ordinary person. Someone who creates slowly at their own pace. He hung up and returned to the studio. Da-eun opened the door and entered. She held 2 warm cups of tea in her hands. Still working? Ji-hwan shook his head. No, just thinking. The two sat on the bench and drank tea. It was a cup Ji-hwan had made. Lumpy, but it fit perfectly in the hand. Da-eun asked, What are you thinking about? Ji-hwan answered, A delicious life. Da-eun tilted her head. A delicious life? Ji-hwan smiled and said, Yes. When I was a fashion designer, I displayed my life to show others. But now I'm cooking my life. Slowly, carefully, to my taste. Da-eun held Ji-hwan's hand. Then can I also be an ingredient in your life? Ji-hwan embraced her. You're the most important ingredient. Like salt. The shadows of the two reflected on the studio wall. They swayed as one. Outside the window, storage jars softly glowed in the moonlight. Hundreds of ceramics on the shelves quietly breathed. Ji-hwan finally realized success doesn't come when others applaud, but when you can raise your head to look at the sky. And love doesn't visit during glamorous times, but stays in the most ordinary moments. His hands still trembled, but that trembling was no longer fear, but proof of being alive. Proof of an imperfect, but therefore more beautiful life. The sound of the pottery wheel turning echoed in the quiet night. Tomorrow and the day after, Ji-hwan would touch clay in this place, without rushing, without comparing himself to others, just listening to his trembling. Thus began Park Ji-hwan's second life, this time for real. Thank you so much for listening to Ji-hwan's journey of redemption and rebirth. Sometimes our greatest failures become the foundation for our most beautiful transformations. If this story touched your heart, please consider subscribing to our channel and leaving a like. Your support helps us bring more meaningful stories to life. What would you do if you lost everything? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, remember, imperfection is not weakness. It's what makes us human. Take care and see you in the next story.